This is CBS 5 Eyewitness News.
It was a relatively quiet day of action until this scene about an hour ago on the 880-980 interchange in Oakland. Protesters marched onto the interstate, and that's where police drew a very hard line. Protests against education cuts have been happening all day in all parts of the Bay Area, and they have been largely peaceful and non-disruptive until this evening. Robert Lyles is in Oakland, where a group of demonstrators stormed onto the Nimitz Freeway, blocking all traffic. Robert.
And as you mentioned, that peace was quickly broken. What happened here in downtown Oakland turned into a dangerous and potentially deadly scene as an estimated 100 protesters stormed not one but two freeways here in downtown Oakland. I'm going to step out of the way for a second and show you just how serious Oakland police are taking the scene here. Virtually all of the intersections surrounding 880, this is at Jackson and Washington, are now being cordoned off by police officers in riot gear. Let me tell you that a CBS 5 photographer, Brian Ewan, was in the midst of that crowd that stormed the freeway and captured these unbelievable images. I talked about the scores of Oakland police officers who chased those protesters onto the freeway. The protest started on the eastbound lanes of 980 just before 5. They literally walked onto oncoming traffic. If not for some quick-thinking motorists who slammed on brakes, this could have been quite deadly. Traffic came to a complete halt as the crews, those protesters that is, about 100 in number, then started walking onto the northbound lanes of 880. That was above the Broadway exit. Now again, scores of police officers started moving in. It appears when the protesters noticed the officers moving in, they did something equally unbelievable. They leapt over the center median and then started running down the southbound lanes of 880. As you saw from that video, officers with batons quickly started moving in, slamming protesters to the deck of the freeway, and began making arrests. Now, if walking onto the freeway was not shocking enough, our cameras captured many of these protesters attempting a sit-in in the northbound lanes of traffic. They too were arrested. I want to give you a scene back out here live. If we can angle our camera up to the interchange of 980 and 880, you can see that traffic is still at an impossible snarl. We are still at 1 hour post these protesters moving onto the freeway. We just heard a short time ago that a number of those protesters were being walked down the Jackson Street exit as they were taken into custody. No word yet on exactly how many protesters have been arrested, but Ann, this was an absolutely unbelievable scene.
Robert, just quickly, who was this group? I mean, were these UC students? Could you tell who was part of this group?
Alan, it's impossible to tell that, and I can tell, and the reason I say that is because many of the protesters wore bandanas over their mouth and noses, so it was unclear if these were actually students or if these were people from the outside who had become part of this protest. What we did notice is that the protesters started at Frank Ogawa and then started snaking around the streets of downtown Oakland, finally making it back to Castro Street, where they then began storming the eastbound lanes of 980 and then began walking onto the northbound lanes of 880. It has been an absolutely chaotic scene. At this hour, it appears that Oakland police have gotten control of the situation. A press conference is underway by Oakland police. We're going to gather more information. What we learn, we'll hope to bring to you before the close of this newscast.
All right, Robert Lyles in Oakland, thank you very much, and keep us updated. Well, meanwhile, thousands of protesters are at Civic Center Plaza in San Francisco, and that's where Joe Vasquez is tonight. Joe.
Well, you know what? These protests, they've broken out all across the plaza. You can see behind me a pretty big crowd of students has taken over the steps of San Francisco City Hall. What makes this protest remarkable is we're seeing just a lot of real people, homemade signs. These are students from elementary and college level, high school students. They have gathered here to send a big message, and that is stop cutting the education budgets. One other thing that's remarkable, there's a big stage in the middle of Civic Center Plaza. They're not letting politicians say a word on that stage. They've said politicians have said enough, they've done enough, or they haven't done enough in some cases. I want to take you here to 11-year-old Ella Griffiths. She's a 6th grader at James Lick Middle School. And Ella, you were telling me you had a lot of fire in your belly.
Yeah, I'm cold here, but the fire and the spirit of all the students and teachers and, everybody here is keeping me warm. So
what do you want people to know about? You were saying you're losing teachers.
My teacher teacher is going to get cut, and my mom is going to lose her job. And I don't think that's right, and I want to stand up for that, and that's why I'm here today.
Very good. Well said, Ella. We're going to step back here and talk to Steve Griffith. You're a third grade teacher at MP Brown. How's it hitting your school?
Well, over the past few years, every time there's budget cuts, we've lost the art teachers, we've lost the music teachers, we've lost the librarians, we've lost the computer aides, we've lost PE. Now we're increasing class size and losing teachers. Who's going to be left to teach everyone's kids?
It's a big question out here as budget cuts continue. In San Francisco School District alone, they've been talking about $113 million in cuts. 25% of individual schools' budgets, you guys. That is the urgency that you're seeing out here as people continue to march through the streets of San Francisco. Yes, it's cold. Yes, it's a little crazy out here, but these folks are determined to have their voices heard.
Joe, yesterday, some of the organizers were saying they were hoping for anywhere between 5,000 and 10,000 people. Do you have any crowd estimate at this point?
Yeah, about an hour ago, we saw 5,000. It's starting to taper off right now as some of these folks have been going home. It has been peaceful here in San Francisco. We hope it stays that way.
All right, Joe Vasquez in San Francisco. Thanks very much.
Well, as we mentioned, protests started early this morning, carried on all day. Simon Perez spent the day in Oakland, which saw some of the largest demonstrations before what we saw on the interstate.
All afternoon long, Frank Ogawa Plaza in front of Oakland City Hall reverberated with the sounds of protest. Hundreds gathered to tell Sacramento education is not something to be cut to help balance the budget.
This is not something that we take lightly, and this is something that as citizens of California we take as being, one of the main missions of why we love this state and why we want, this state to continue and to prosper is to have this kind of educational system.
The protest began at the UC Berkeley campus with students blocking Saylor Gate, chanting no cuts, no fees, education must be free. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you think this will change what happens in Sacramento?
10, it's a contributor.
At noon, the crowd took off down Telegraph Avenue from Berkeley and marched 5 miles to Oakland, where it joined a few hundred people who were already here. The state is broke. We don't have enough money to pay for anything, really. So why not have education share part of the burden?
Well, it's not that education is sharing part of the burden, it's that the poor students in California are sharing most of the burden.
While the crowd maintained its enthusiasm, not everyone shared it.
I still have some classes today, and I'm trying to graduate on time, so I have to go to them. And I think it's a good thing, but at the same time, I don't know if there's going to be a lot of short-term effects from it, because like you said, there's not a lot of money to go around.
No reports of any violence or any arrests on the UC Berkeley campus or on the march down Telegraph Avenue. In Oakland, I'm Simon Perez, CBS 5.
Ramirez at UC Santa Cruz, where students use their bodies to block the two main entrances to campus starting at about 3 o'clock this morning, effectively shutting down the university for the day.
Get up, don't give up the fight.
It was still dark when students started the blockade. At one point, they parted to let a police car through, but a driver behind the cop also tried to squeeze in and ended up being a hit and run.
Stop the car!
A few students were pulled out of the way, and one student had his foot run over, and another one actually ended up on the windshield.
I went up onto the hood sideways.
Other students allegedly broke the car's windshield as it reversed and sped away. The students suffered minor injuries, but not all of them agreed to the tactics.
Although they're being peaceful, they are inconveniencing students and faculty.
Santa Cruz and campus police did not confront the students, and university officials say they would support the students' message protesting the cuts to education, but only if they're nonviolent. In Santa Cruz, Len Ramirez, CBS 5.
And one more note from the higher education front. This picture came to us from a viewer in San Jose, and as you can see, SJSU stood for something a little different this afternoon. All right, now back to Chopper 5 Live, which is over 980, which had been closed down entirely for a good while this afternoon because of the protesters there. You can see police are still trying to deal with 153 people is what we are being told have been taken into custody. They're all going to be taken to the Santa Rita jail facility to be processed. We're being told they're not necessarily all going to be arrested, but there were more than 100 people who got onto the freeway, closed it down, conducted their sit-in there, stopping rush hour traffic. So that's what's happening right now in the East Bay as they try and move these people off to the side. They are, as you can see, on an off-ramp right now, and traffic is starting to flow once again.
But it wasn't just college students getting a lesson in political action today. Kids at Harvest Park Middle School in Pleasanton were among many who took part in a rally this morning. Teachers in Pleasanton say they lost $11 million in funding this year alone and expect close to $2 million more in cuts next year.
We just recently made huge concessions to try and maintain the programs that exist for the students in Pleasanton, and the rally is just to bring awareness to the fact that we need to get the community to rally behind us and prevent further damage to what has been an excellent school district in the past, and we want to maintain it that way.
But they say budget cuts have already forced them to increase class sizes in kindergarten through 3rd grade and in 9th grade English and math from 20 students to 25.